Hi everyone, in this video we're going to learn about verbs and verb tenses. Alright, here are a number of tenses on the left side: present tense, past tense, future tense. The perfect tenses and the progressive tense and perfect progressive tenses. Now, you don't need to memorize these names at all. What's important on this test is being able to tell between present, past, and future. So let's start at the top. She sets the timer. That's pretty easy to tell. She's doing it right now. She set the timer. It's in the past. She set the timer yesterday. And she will set the timer. She'll set it next week or tomorrow or in 15 minutes. It's happening in the future. When we move on here to the perfect tenses, these can get a little tricky, so we're going to walk through these. She has set the timer. That's happening in the present. She had set the timer, and that's happening in the past. Now this can get confusing because set and set in both sentences, but we know that one is happening in the present and one is happening in the past. And that's because you actually want to shift your focus to the verb has. She has set the timer, that's present, and she had set the timer, and that's happening in the past. Same goes for the future. She will have set the timer. Now it's, again, we have set, set, and set for present, past, and future. But for this example, she will have set the timer. By looking at these keywords, will have, that tells us that this sentence is in the future. And then let's walk through these next ones, progressive tenses. Notice again, we have she is setting, she was setting, she will be setting. The form of the verb for setting is the same, but if we look here, she is setting the timer. That tells us that this sentence is happening in the present. She was setting, that's happening in the past. And she will be setting the timer, that's in the future. So we'll jump into another example here using the perfect tenses. You don't need to know you don't need to memorize perfect tense and then be able to give an example, because that's not what they're testing when you take this exam. But you do want to know to match present with present. And so let's see. You want to match present perfect with present and past perfect with past. Now these examples will help you understand what that looks like. Mary has curled up in bed and she begins to read her book. Now this is present, so we've got she has curled up in bed and she begins to read her book. Now you might think, well, that sounds like it's happening in the past, but when we compare it to the actual past tense form, Mary had curled up in bed compared to Mary has curled up in bed, you can recognize that the first sentence here, Mary has curled up in bed, should go with a present tense verb. She begins to read her book. And if we look at the past example, Mary had curled up in bed and she began to read her book. So past will always go with past and present should go with present. Okay, let's move on to another example, and this is a sample test question. After the rainstorm, a brilliant rainbow light up the sky as white, fluffy clouds reappeared. So the first step is to look for a verb tense clue within the question stem. In other words, you want to look at parts of the sentence that are not underlined to find out exactly what tense we're supposed to be using. So we notice here, after the rainstorm, is telling us that the event occurs in the past, after the rainstorm. So the correct choice will only contain past tense verbs. So this next step is to eliminate answers with present or future tense. So we're going to get rid of A and D, and that's because we've got lights up the sky, that's happening in the present, and we want past, so we knock out D. And we knock out A because this verb light is also a present tense form. All right, so now we're down to B and C. The correct choice will only contain past tense verbs. So we've got in C, lit up the sky. But then we've also got reappears, and that's a present tense form. So we've got to eliminate C. That will leave us with B. And that's correct. So let's reread that. After the rainstorm, a brilliant rainbow lit up the sky as white, fluffy clouds reappeared. So all of our verbs are in past tense, and so that is the correct answer.